G'day everyone, welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. My name is Mark and welcome to the show. Now in today's show I'm going to be talking about the South African Springboks squad that's been selected by Rassie Erasmus to go on their 2024 Northern Tour. There's been 18 forwards selected in the squad and 16 backs. I'm going to go through the names and give you my views and opinions about this particular squad. So let's get into the video right now. Now, I don't know about you all, but I'm getting super excited as we're getting closer and closer to the Autumn International Series this year. And don't forget, we've got South Africa, New Zealand, Argentina and Australia all heading up north to take on the best of the northern teams. And it's going to be an absolutely fantastic series. I'm going to be following every single game here on Inside Rugby with Mark. So if you do enjoy my content, make sure you stick around for that. I'll be doing pre-game shows and I'll be doing post-game shows as well, going in depth and having a look at each of the games and seeing what actually unraveled, I should say, during those games. But today we're talking about the South African Springboks. Rassie has named their squad to go north, and one of the things that I'm finding really interesting as we get ready for this Northern Tour series this year is looking at what the coaches are doing around their selections and whether or not they're prepared to take a number of inexperienced players, give them the opportunity at this level, or are we going to see more of that in 2025? That's one of the things that's been really interesting to me as we see these squads named. So let's go through Rassie's squad, have a look at the Springboks squad that's been selected to go north. Of course, they've got 3 games in the series. They're going to kick off their encounter against Scotland at Murrayfield. That's going to be a bumper game. And then it's on to England to play England at Twickenham, and then they're going to finish up against Wales at the Principality Stadium in Cardiff. So a very interesting tour there. A lot of you are saying, well, it's going to be the game against England that's going to be the toughest. But you know what? Since I've been around for the last 60 years, rugby is a very, very funny game, and you just don't know what's going to happen. So Rassie has named 8 front rowers in this particular squad, and they start off with Thomas du Toit, Vincent Koch, Frans Maherbe, Oxen Chair, Gerhard Steenkamp, Malcolm Marx, Bonami and Jan-Hendrik Wessels. So some outstanding front row combinations possible there for Rassie with those particular selections, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this front row, whatever combination Rassie decides to put out on the park, is going to go. I think Oxen Chair has been one of the outstanding players in world rugby this year. He's been playing very, very well. And it's great to see Jan-Hendrik Wessels in there as well, given another go and going on tour with this particular squad. I will say at this point in time that I'm very, very saddened by the news around Steven Kitshoff at the moment. I send him a lot of healing power, and I hope his devastating neck injury is not going to keep him out for rugby forever. We all want to see Steven Kitshoff back in the South African team. He's been an absolute icon for the Springboks team over the year, and I'm one of his fans, that's for sure. So let's hope Steven Kitshoff is back on the rugby field in the not too distant future. So lots and lots of experience in this front row combinations for Rassie, and I think that's the way he's played it by looking at the rest of the squad. He wants to go, I think, to the Northern Tour and have 3 very successful games. I don't think there's going to be too much experimenting for the Springboks for the remainder of this particular year. Rassie's got so much depth to choose from. I'm guessing that we're going to see some more introductions perhaps in 2025 to the South African Springboks team. Now moving on and looking at the lock combinations, and we're going to see Eben Etzebeth, of course. We're going to see Franco Mostert, who's back in the Springboks team. Of course, he's been injured for the entire period of the 24 campaign, and it's great to see him back. And it's going to be really interesting now, isn't it, to see whether or not Franco Mostert gets a start with Eben Etzebeth, because for me, Ruan Nortje has been playing very, very well this season indeed, and deserves his space in the South African team. So that's going to be one of the interesting selections that I'm going to be keeping my eye out on. Let me know whether you think Franco Mostert is going to get straight back into this team selection, or do you think that Ruan Nortje has done enough and deserves to be named in the starting team against Scotland at Murrayfield? Love to hear your comments on that one. And the other lock, we're going with 4 locks for the Springboks to the Northern Tour, and the last one is R.G. Schneemann, and fantastic player, of course. I don't know if there's a better player in World Rugby in terms of offloads, and if he comes off the bench, he always makes a significant difference to the South African team. So an absolutely fantastic selection there, I think, to have the Viking coming on for the Springboks throughout this particular Northern Tour. So now moving on to the loose forwards and the back rowers for the South Africans in this particular squad, and we're going to see Peter Steph du Toit. Of course, if you've watched any of my videos on South Africa, you'll know I'm a huge fan of Peter Steph du Toit. Another one that's up there as player of the year for me for the South African Springboks. Absolute giant for them, and just love watching him play in general. And then we're going to see Captain Courageous Sia Kolesi, we're going to see Elric Lowe, we're going to see Kwagga Smith, Marco van Staden and Jasper Wiese. So those are going to be the 6 loosies and back rows included in this Springbok squad. I've got to say right now, I've been very, very impressed with Jasper Wiese as the games have gone on this year. I think he's got better and better. Had a couple of issues with his discipline, didn't he? But he seems to have sorted that out. And I think he's playing extremely good rugby. But for me, Kwagga Smith has to be one of the standout loose forwards in World Rugby at the moment. In any team that I would select, he would be coming in off the bench as that impact player. He plays absolutely fantastic in that role. He does a lot of things behind the ball to upset the opposition and really creates the opportunities going forward, and he's very good at scoring tries out of nowhere as well, if we look back over the campaign in 2024. So there we go, that's the 18 forwards that have been selected in the squad for Rassie. Not a lot of experimentation going on, a lot of old heads, a lot of experience, and I think that's the way Rassie is playing this particular strategy as he heads north. He wants to win all these 3 games comprehensively, I'm sure, against his opponents. Okay, so moving on to the backs now that have been selected in the squad to go north. And again, are we going to see some experimenting going on from Rassie, or are we going to see the tried and tested? Well, let's go through the squad for the back line and have a look right now. Starting off at halfbacks, and we've got Jaden Hendrikse, Kolbus Reinhardt and Grant Williams. So the answer is no. We're going to see the same 3 that we've seen throughout this campaign. Grant Williams is going to be back, of course. As you know from probably watching any of my videos, I really like Grant Williams. I think as we head towards 2027 in the Rugby World Cup in Australia, he's going to be one of the standout halfbacks in World Rugby. So keep your eye on his evolution. I think he's going to be given a chance on this Northern Tour to really continue his development with the Springboks team. And then looking at the number 10s, well, it's interesting. It's Manny Lebok and it's Handré Pollard. Of course, we've got Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu, who's out with injury at the moment. But we saw that brilliant game from Manny Lebok against Argentina at the end of the Rugby Championship. And I think that's given Rassie a lot of belief now in Manny Lebok to go forward in the number 10 jersey for the Springboks. And I'm really happy to see this, because I think Manny Lebok playing well for the Springboks is one of the greatest things to see in World Rugby, and he can ignite that backline as we saw against Argentina in that second game. And I think by having Handré Pollard there to come off the bench potentially, or even come into a number 12 position, could be a master stroke as well by Rassie. So I think we're going to see a little bit of playing around with that particular role and see how those 2 actually go. Okay, so Rassie has named 4 centres to go on this particular tour, and there's probably not many surprises for you all with the naming of these 4. Yes, we're going to see Lucano Arm, we're going to see Damien Dialandi, Andre Esterhuizen is back from injury, and Jesse Creel, of course, is going to be the other one. Now, we've seen Dialandi and Creel be the concrete rock for South Africa in the centres over the recent years, and boy, I think you can't go past those guys. Lucano Arm hasn't been playing at the greatest level of his game thus far, but I think we're going to see more of him on this Northern Tour. And Andre Esterhuizen is such a big man and a beast there in the centres. He can cause destruction, and I probably would like to see him play against Scotland in the first game. So let's see whether Rassie makes that call or not. But those are going to be the 4 centres that are going to take to the field for South Africa throughout this Northern Tour campaign. Okay, so let's move on to the wings and fullbacks that Rassie's included in this squad. No real surprises here. We've got Kurt Lee Ardenser, we've got Fassi, we've got Cheslin Colby, Willie Leroux, Makazolo Mapimpi, Kainan Moody and Damian Willemse is back, of course, and that's a fantastic thing for Springboks and global rugby fans to see Willemse back into the Springboks squad. So it's going to be interesting to see what we see with rotation with these particular players. Willie le Roux, of course, if he plays in all of these 3 test matches against Scotland, England and Wales, he's going to come up with 100 caps for the Springboks. I think he's going to be the 8th player in Springboks history to achieve that milestone in his career. So it's going to be interesting to see how sentimental Rassie's going to be during this particular tour, and whether or not he gives Willie le Roux that opportunity to turn over 100 caps for the Springboks. Keep your eye on that one. But I think in terms of power out wide, the Springboks have got it all. I hope to see a little bit more of Kainan Moody in this particular tour as well. We all know how brilliant he can be. Maybe there's going to be some interjection with him through the centres, who knows? He can play there as well as on the wing. But I think the most exciting player that I'm going to be keeping my eye on is Damian Willemse. I think it's fantastic he's back in this team. I'm a huge fan of his, and I expect him to do some fantastic things on this tour for the Springboks. So there we go, that's the squad that Rassie has named to go north on this northern tour. I think there's no shadow of a doubt that Rassie wants to win all these 3 games. He's picked a very experienced squad to go north, and I think next year in 2025 might be the year that we see Rassie experimenting a little bit more with younger players and those players that are on the fringe of Springboks selection. But don't forget the depth that Rassie has available. He's going to be able to name 2 or 3 teams that can take on most teams in World Rugby, and that's going to be absolutely fantastic to see throughout 2025. But let's see how the squad goes. Let me know in the comments what you think. Are there any players that are a little bit unfortunate not to be going on this tour? I have one that I'd like to throw out there in particular, and it's Cameron Honeycomb. I'm a huge fan of this young man. I think he's going to be one of the sensational Springboks players as we head towards the 2027 Rugby World Cup. And I'm a little bit disappointed that Honeycomb hasn't found his way into this particular squad to go on this northern tour. Let me know what you think of Cameron Honeycomb in the comments. Now, as many of you had made mention in the comments of previous videos on the South African team, a lot of the players are starting to get on in age. They won't be around when it comes 2027, and Rassie is going to have to make that transition like a lot of the other coaches are in their respective teams. So it's going to be interesting to see when this happens and whether or not we start to see this happen in early 2025 with the South African Springboks. Let me know in the comments what you think Rassie's plan is to transition some of those older players out of the Springboks team and to give the younger guys the experience they need in time to hit that Rugby World Cup in 2027, and making sure South Africa is going to be as competitive as they possibly can be. I think it's going to be very difficult for either Scotland, England or Wales to be able to beat the Springboks squad, no matter what team Rassie puts out on the field. But you never know in a game of rugby. Upsets happen all the time, and you never know what might happen on this particular tour. Now, don't forget to head over to the community page here on my channel and check out the voting that you can participate in. So far we've got Wales's Northern Tour up, and now we've got South Africa's Northern Tour up. You can have a vote on how many games you think each of these teams are going to win on their Northern Tours. And watch out, I'm going to be putting up the All Blacks, the Wallabies and Argentina soon as well, and you can vote on how many games you think they're going to win on their Northern Tour. We're just a couple of days away from the All Blacks starting their Northern Tour against Japan in Tokyo. I'm going to be following that game here on my channel. So make sure if you enjoy my content, you hit the subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up as well. That always helps with this YouTube algorithm. And I'll see you as part of our Inside Rugby with Mark global rugby family. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Well, that's it for this particular video. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. The last thing for me to say is make sure you stay safe, stay well, no matter where you are in the world. Keep enjoying your rugby, and I'll see you again really soon right here on Inside Rugby with Mark. Until next time, it's time to say goodbye for now. See you later.